This will be our 10-second warning to begin.
Okay. 5, 4.
Welcome to our September 4th, 2012 Gilbert Town Council study session. We will begin with agenda item number 1 to review for Thursday night. Our formal town council meeting. I will begin with assignments. Councilmember Cook, if you could be prepared to welcome our scouts. The oath of office on agenda item number 1 will be conducted by the mayor. Agenda item number 2, recognition of Ray Patton, Councilmember Cooper. Agenda item number 3, recognition of Les May, Vice Mayor Sens. Agenda item number 4, Councilmember Ray, if you can recognize our Gilbert NFL flag football team. Agenda item number 6, Pillar of the Month responsibility, Councilmember Peterson. And then I understand that our agenda item number 2 from tonight, the presentation on National Preparedness Month, will be moved to Thursday night. And let's assume that will not need an introduction from a town council member, but if it does, Councilmember Daniels. Does that work? Any concerns? Okay, thank you. As far as preparation for Thursday night, Councilmember Cooper, what items would you like to discuss today?
$38 and $40. 38 and 40.
Councilmember Peterson?
Mayor, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Number 17, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor Sens?
Number 9.
Councilmember Cook?
I'd like to discuss 20, and then 24, 25, and 26. I'd love to have Dan talk a little bit more about that.
Councilmember Ray?
They've already been pulled, Mayor.
Councilmember Daniels? Okay.
Oh, Mayor?
Yes.
I just had a short question on 33 where we're talking acquisition, but I don't recall seeing anything on appraisals.
Okay, thank you. I am going to add, and Councilmember Ray, I was looking at my list too. I think they were covered with the exception of a very quick question on 10. And so why don't we go in the sequential order, and let's start with 9. And Vice Mayor Sens on number 9.
Yeah, Mayor, I don't know if Chief Dorn's here. I didn't really have a question on the agreement per se. I just think I haven't seen anything, and I think it might be appropriate to kind of get an update as far as what they can tell us on how we're doing in the town of Gilbert on drugs. And I don't, wait a minute, that didn't come out right. What is our, do we have a drug issue?
Yes. I think it's a great question, and it will be helpful for the council to hear that in the community. And to our town leadership, if you could maybe just have that added as a study session item next time. And really, it is a discussion we've had in great detail over the years, and I think the timeliness is there. So thank you. Manager Banger.
Mayor, Vice Mayor Sens, just so we're clear, are you looking for general stats on drug activity in the community among juvenile, among repeat offenders, just in general?
Yeah, in general, because I understand there might be some sensitive data there, and I'm not asking for that. But how are we doing as a community to, part of the mayor's clean, safe, vibrant?
Okay.
So.
Chief Dorn is probably also number 10. With the chief just arriving, he didn't hear the first part of that discussion. Do you want to ask it again and get some general comments right now?
Sir. Chief, thanks for coming down. With 9, I don't have any problem being part of the task force. My only question is if we could get an update on how the community is doing in regards to controlling drugs and what type of activity do we have in the town. And
Hey,
go ahead.
Mayor, Vice Mayor Sens. Kelly, is this something that we can talk about? It hasn't been agendized. The agenda item is just the agreement.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, I think what you can talk about is the purpose of this agreement and why, there are benefits to the community. To go too far, we'd need to have a specific agenda item.
So, Chief, say what's appropriate for today, and then if we need to get into more detail, we'll put it on a future agenda.
Thank you, Mayor. Vice Mayor Sens. First of all, with the agreement, the benefit that we get out of that by having somebody at the DEA task force is that there's no additional personnel to Gilbert. We assign one of our current narcotics investigators, and basically what we're doing is rotating our narcotics detectives over to DEA on a 2-year assignment so that they get the experience. And what we have found is that those cases that we don't have either the expertise or the equipment or the time or the money to work that have a nexus back to Gilbert that we may, from a case that we're working here, we can pass that off to our detective who's over at the DEA task force and utilize those federal resources to go beyond our capabilities here. And the return we get is that cases that they get through their larger cases in the DEA task force then can get passed down to Gilbert if there's a Gilbert nexus, and we've seen that. We can also tap into the intelligence and information sharing capabilities that DEA has. So it's been a very good relationship for us. We do have a benefit in that we obtain any of the large-scale investigations that they have, all of the assets that are seized from those large-scale investigations, a portion of those come back to us here in Gilbert that then can be used to support our drug enforcement, major felony type activities here. That benefits the intelligence, the information sharing of what we're seeing here is that not really an increase in drug activity in Gilbert. We're still very concerned about the heroin activity. We see a shift, and it's a shift that's not only occurring here in Gilbert, it's occurring all over the valley, all over the state, that after cracking down on precursor materials for methamphetamine, that took away the availability of manufacturing methamphetamine, makes it cheaper now to go into the heroin market. And we see that with illegal drugs, that as you crack down on one, we won't get into the legalization argument, but it's the same thing. If you get into one drug and lower the sanctions for that one drug, the bad guys aren't going to get away from their profits, so they're going to get into something else that they're going to be able to make their profits on. The other big concern that we've got in our community and throughout the valley and through information that we're getting through the DEA task force is on prescription drugs. That's something through the Arizona Criminal Justice Commission we're taking a look at across the state right now of additional legislation and additional education enforcement programs that may be able to get into the prescription drug issues. And so I hope that helps.
It does, thank you. And I don't know, I still think it might be good to have a presentation and a study session on how we're doing as a community to, a little bit more detail, if that's appropriate, or is that pretty much all you can tell us?
We can make a presentation on the trends that we're seeing in some of the diversion programs that we have through our counseling unit and other programs that are available for diversion and prevention.
Thank you. Chief, the next item is number 10, and this too is just a very simple question or two. The county, we have an intergovernmental agreement for the animal control services. I wondered on the fees that are associated with that, is that a fixed fee, or is it as we use the services not to exceed a certain amount?
I'd have to look at the contract, Mayor, to see. I know that there's certain fees that apply to, say, an animal pickup, so many animals that are picked up, that are taken to the facility. I believe there's a cap to that. but I don't have the fee structure breakdown. I was asked a question earlier if we've ever looked into the possibility of doing that service ourselves here in Gilbert. We did take a look at it at one time. There's two ways that you can possibly go with that. One is just doing the animal pickup, but then you still need sheltering, and we would still have to contract with the county for sheltering. And the sheltering really is the biggest expense that they have to make up through their fee structure for the operation of that shelter, for food, for all the utility costs, the infrastructure costs, veterinary costs, all those things that go into running a shelter.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Councilmember Cook?
Quick question about, do you know how many pets have actually gone through the process over the last 2 years? How many have, their total number? Because I was kind of curious, the dollar per pet that we spent over the last 2 years.
Our planning and research coordinator did some research on how many animals have been picked up. Part of what's makes it difficult to track, and we can get some of these through the county if we can get them to return the information to us, is that it's not just stuff that comes through the police department. If a resident calls up and reports a loose dog, then the police department will respond if the dog is a threat, or if it's a traffic hazard, any of those types of things. And we actually have our officers go out, and if they're friendly, we can put them in the back seat of the police car and take them over here to our station, and we keep them until animal control can come. If they're a threat, then we actually go out and can do what we need to do to neutralize the threat and to protect life and safety. Beyond that, a citizen can call animal control direct, or they'll contact us and we'll direct them to contact animal control if it's a loose animal. So there's several ways that information gets to them, and those requests for service get to them, which makes it difficult for us to track. But I can try to get that information for you for Thursday to see if we have any numbers on the usage of rabies in animal control.
Thank you. And that could be also, an email that could come to the council.
Okay.
But if you do have some figures by Thursday and you haven't sent an email, that would be great to have you come forward to.
Yes, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you. The next agenda item is 17, which 17, 18 are very, well, they go together, and Vice Mayor, and that was from Councilmember Peterson, and Vice Mayor Sens, you had asked for 33, which is also tied to 17 and 18, which is under the public hearing. So Edgar, if you could comment on 17, 18, 33, bring them together. And Councilmember Peterson, you brought up 17. Before Edgar gives an overview, did you want to ask a specific question?
Yes, I did, Mayor. It's nothing big here. I just thought this was the appropriate time. We have a wastewater contingency economic development reserve, and I've spoken with Don Irvine about this, and it just seems that when we have that money set aside for a specific purpose, and it fits just the exact purpose, we ought to use the more restricted purpose, if you will, first before we use just general contingency. And so unless there are any objections to it, I wanted to move that to amend the motion that it would be from the wastewater contingency economic development reserve portion of the fund.
Vice Mayor Sens, please.
The way I read the agenda item, it already specifies that we'll take this money out of the wastewater fund reserve, not general fund.
So 17B reads, so I agree.
Both of them, and 18.
I'll look for some direction. So where Councilmember Peterson was saying that he would propose making an amendment, what I'm hearing is it's already there, and is that correct? So
Are you asking me, Mayor, or are you talking to Don or somebody there?
I'm
Sorry.
probably, Edgar and Don have now come to the microphone. So Don, if you could answer that question.
And Mayor, Councilmember Peterson, thank you. On the funding sources, and this was specific to the use of the wastewater funds, Councilmember Peterson had suggested that in the financial policies for that Council approved on November 5th, we'd also established an economic development reserve in those funds of the equivalent of $1 million. It is the same fund, the same funding source. If Council wants to choose to designate it as such, as using the economic development reserve, we could certainly do so. But that would be at Council's discretion.
Oh, I see.
Mayor,
Councilmember Daniels?
forgive me, Victor. It's easier when you're here, but I'll talk to you through the phone too. Are you saying that it should come from economic development contingency rather than wastewater or capital improvement project contingency?
No, there's specifically a wastewater economic development reserve of $1 million that was set aside by our financial policies. So this just fits exactly into that envelope in my mind, and seems like we should use it there rather than just general contingency. That's my only comment, really. It's not a do or die. It seems to make more sense to me.
So maybe we should ask staff, why did you choose the contingency that you did rather than the economic development wastewater contingency?
Absolutely, Mayor, Councilmember Daniels and Councilmember Peterson. With the funding source that we're talking about here, the Economic Development Reserve that was set up by policy is still within the wastewater fund. So we're still talking about the use of wastewater operating funds. What we're trying to match up now, though, because it was an unanticipated project, is we have the cash available, which we intend to use. We also need to then mirror that up with the legal authority to spend that cash, and that's the appropriation that we're looking to do. We do have appropriation set aside in a contingency line for any capital projects that we needed to do or any improvement districts that may come in throughout the course of the year. And this is a perfectly legitimate use of that. If Council wanted to emphasize, however, that this is tied to the economic development because of the hospital, Council could choose to do so. It would still be appropriate.
Mayor?
Yes.
I guess my question is, what's the purpose of the economic development reserve in wastewater, if not for something like this? And when will it ever be used, if not for something like this? So,
Thank you. Don, do you have some feedback on that question?
Mayor, that would be entirely up to the pleasure of the Council. We did set up and we emphasized the $5 million within the general fund for Economic Development Reserve. There was a considerable amount of conversation that occurred at that time regarding what if the particular economic development opportunities or the particular assistance that needed to be had were in water and wastewater funds. Would that be a potential place where we could look to setting that aside as well? So we did choose to do so through the use of the policies that were established again on November 5th. But the flexibility there is still within the wastewater operating fund. It's simply a designation, not an official accounting designation, but a designation within the budget that it was intended to be used for something that would support economic development purposes.
Councilmember Cooper?
So there is still the general fund reserve.
Correct.
At $5 million. Okay. Do we have, because I thought as part of that general fund reserve, we had a policy in place as to how quickly we'd need to replenish it, and we'd need to have a plan to replenish it. Is the same procedure in place for the wastewater?
Mayor, Councilmember Cooper, the policy to which you speak is for the minimum fund balance that was established. It's separate from the Economic Development Reserve policy. That minimum fund balance policy establishes a minimum threshold for the reserves for the general fund, which allows us to continue to have 3 months worth of operating and the annual debt service payment. The use of the Economic Development Reserve would not trigger that unless the use of that reserve brought the overall reserve down under that threshold.
What I heard from Don is that either one works, and Councilmember Peterson has a good point that there is a designation that this would be a good use for it. So we're in preparing for Thursday night. If an amendment were proposed, do we have any more discussion on it today that we should be hearing? Vice Mayor Sens.
Yeah, Mayor, thank you. this intersection is a major intersection within the town of Gilbert. The main thing we did as a council is we prioritized it and moved it up. There was always a plan to improve this intersection at some point in our capital improvement program. So, yeah, the hospital is a major driver, but it's not the only one. And so I think we're planning for the future. And so I'm not sure it really matters either way.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Don?
Mayor, Councilmember Peterson and I spoke earlier today if the council were to move forward using the Economic Development Reserve within wastewater, because we didn't establish specific appropriation for that Economic Development Reserve, but for wastewater as a whole. Within the motion itself, we could recognize that we're utilizing that wastewater reserve, and we would use wastewater contingency appropriation then to establish the budget.
Thank you. Edgar, if you could return. Based on Councilmember Peterson's comment, I think that's been addressed. And Vice Mayor Sens had asked about 33. Did you want, and I realize that's public hearing, but did you want a quick overview, understanding that Thursday night we'll do that, but Vice Mayor Sens, did you have some specific questions?
My only question was, and from what I recall, I did not see an appraisal in the council communication, so I was wondering where we stand on appraisals before we approve the acquisition.
Mayor Lewis, Vice Mayor Sens. Item number 33 is a carryover or a continue item from the August 2nd council item or council agenda. As noted on the financial section, the date of the appraisals, well, the appraisals are complete. I've identified it as far as the date of appraisals on the financial, and just made a footnote that the appraisals are available upon request. It's just that the document itself is a lengthy document, and on top of that, you have 4 on these that would make it a pretty lengthy council communication.
Okay, I apologize.
So the numbers that are reflected in the financial impact reflect the appraisal amounts.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Cooper?
I'm just going to go back to that other point on the fund, just briefly, just for our consideration over the next couple days. Is a lot of times these funds are set up to assist in the attraction or the retention of a business that might not otherwise occur, and so any money you take away from that might take away from future opportunities. I'm just as I'm pondering over it, and so it's just a thought for us to consider as we move toward Thursday, and it may not be a big enough thought, but that's the other impression that came to me.
So there's some caution you just expressed that because either approach will work, that maybe we just keep it the way it is. Okay,
Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Cook?
Don, are you available? Well, I guess the question I have is when it comes to the designation of these funds, and as you said, it's at the leisure of the council as to how we might want to use those designation of fund. I guess the question is, what is the value of the individual designations? Because it sounds like it almost comes into a singular pot. We can go either A or B, but why not combine the two into one pot? So I'm trying to figure out what's the value of the designation at that point.
Mayor, Councilmember Cook, allow me to clarify a little bit. Number one, I used the term designated earlier, and I mean it in the English definition of the word, not in the accounting terminology. So I was just talking with the finance director. We are not officially designating those in the terms of the GASB 54 requirements. So that's a different word altogether. What we've done and what we opted to do through the council discussion last November was simply within the financial models illustrate or set aside label, if you will, $1 million of that fund balance as intended for the use of economic development activities. So, so on the one hand, designated is probably not the correct word to use simply because there is an official accounting term for that. But we do have within our fund balance models then that that label of the $1 million for the economic development purposes. The other answer to your question in terms of these two different sources, that one is specifically for wastewater purposes, and it is only residing within the wastewater fund itself. The other, which is our contingency line item, it's the legal appropriation. It can be used for an improvement district. It could be used for other capital projects. It's not specifically tied to a specific revenue source. It needs to be matched with a revenue source. On an improvement district, for example, if we needed to form one in the middle of the year, or if we needed to form it through the budget process, we would have to establish that funding source. Usually with improvement districts, it's some type of a bond for that particular infrastructure or improvement that needs to be done for that community. So that's the difference between the two, is the one is set, which needs to be matched with the funding source itself. The other is specific to that funding source.
So back to Councilmember Cooper's comment, let's say the wastewater enterprise is zero, but we have an opportunity in the future to use some money. We can actually go back to the other more general fund to allocate dollars or something else. Because I'm just trying to figure out what is that value of this economic one if we can go back to the more general pot and use that as well.
The primary differences that we're speaking of here are the differences between the cash that's sitting in the bank that can be spent for a specific purpose, and then the legal authority to spend it. And so many times, and most of the time, when we come before you with contracts such as these, it's already been budgeted for. So we've already matched those two. We've matched the cash available to spend for the project, and we've matched the legal authority to spend those dollars. What we're having to do, because this is an unanticipated, is we're having to do both. So we're coming before you with, here are the dollars in the bank that we would like to spend. Here's the legal authority that we would like to use to spend it. So we are recommending that we take that legal authority from that contingency line, reduce that contingency line, increase it on the project side instead, because again, we can't increase our overall city budget. But the reason why we're talking about differences, it's not general fund, or it's more of a general capital appropriation. So it's not dollars, it's the legal authority to spend dollars.
Councilmember Cooper?
I'm going to just try to ask Councilmember Cook's question again, just so I make sure I understand the response, because you're good, but sometimes too good. No. If there was no economic development set aside or non-set aside, whatever you want to call it, but no line item or no specified economic development piece in the wastewater area, or if we've used it all up and an opportunity came along that the council felt like was one that we needed to extend, or we wanted to extend some utilities to that were wastewater related, would we have the ability within other funds to do that, or would we have already exhausted our opportunities?
Is that a similar question? Okay. Thank you for rephrasing that for me. I think I can address that a little bit more appropriately. In that particular case, had we already exhausted that money, if there were still dollars available in the wastewater fund, then we could suggest to use those. So another appropriate funding source were available, we could use that appropriate funding source instead. But again, you have to match up the available budget within the budget year. So we either program it through the budget process, or we have to reduce a line someplace else within the budget if we do it in the middle of the year. So we have to match up the budget with an appropriate funding source. So yes, we could do so.
Thank you. Thanks, Don. Next, agenda item 20, related to a grant, and Councilmember Cook.
So my question is this: trying to be as consistent as I have been in the past, when I look at the opportunity for us to request grant money from the federal government, one of the things that I always think of is it, a must-have in our community that we can't pay for with our own dollars, Or could there be another community that's less fortunate than Gilbert that they could apply for those dollars to be used for that? So I guess I'm looking for what really is the value of making this request for this grant. I mean, where are we going to apply it to? I know I see that it's called the Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Improvement Fund, where bicycle and pedestrian facilities, intelligent transportation system, and paving are all kind of combined in that. Is that something that we just are not planning to fund with our own dollars for these things? Or do we really need to have these dollars to fund these?
Mayor Lewis, Councilmember Cook, I give I guess a little bit of background and take a step back to the CMAQ funding, or congestion mitigation, air quality. Each region of the United States, so the Phoenix region, receives a certain amount of funding each year, and then we go through MAG. We submit applications, and those applications are graded and based on merit as far as needs go, as far as the types of projects. There are 4 different types of projects listed: bike and ped projects, intelligent transportation systems, PM10 paving, and then street sweepers, which is also part of the PM10 particulate matter. And all those come from separate pots of money, but they are they're all under the umbrella of the CMAQ grants. I think we've identified projects that are identified in our CIP that right now are locally funded. I think the benefit for this and applying for these funds is that we can move up some of the projects that are 10 years out, that we could move them up to fiscal year 15, 16, or 17, and then we could also apply the local money saved through these federal grants to other projects that aren't funded. Hope that answers your question.
That answers exactly what I wanted to hear. Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Ray.
One quick follow-up question. There's a small percentage of a local match. Where is that match included in our budget? Where would our match money come from?
Mayor Lewis, Councilmember Ray, most typically the match money for the CMAQ funding has come out of the streets fund historically.
And is that, do we have that funding available? Is it already set aside in the budget?
Well, this is for fiscal year 15, 16, and 17, and so we'd have to make that available. Okay. And it's a 5.7% match.
Thank you. Other questions?
Mayor?
Yes, Councilman Peterson.
I had a question on this one. This funding process, I know these are federal funds from what I understand. Is there some total budget amount that's already set aside for these grant monies, or is the amount awarded overall dependent upon how many people ask for it? I'm not sure I'm making myself clear, but you understand what I'm asking?
Eric, please.
Mayor Lewis, Councilmember Peterson. Each fiscal year, there's a amount set aside in the attachment to the council communication. The Phoenix region has $4.5 million each fiscal year set aside for paving unpaved roads, and then that $4.5 million will get divvied up among the jurisdictions in the MAG region based on the grading criteria of the applications. So there is a set amount. There's not necessarily a set amount that each jurisdiction receives.
That answers my question perfectly. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Cook.
Councilmember Peterson, I think if you look at the letter that came from MAG, there actually indicates some of that total funding source. So however the communities that are able to get the grants will get a portion of those totals, based upon what's in the MAG letter.
So that's on the page 217
yep.
of our 400 pages. 218.
I just wanted to be, I saw that. I just wanted to be clear, though, that amount is set before we ask for funding, not after.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Anything else on 20? All right, thank you. Next, Councilmember Cook, agenda items 24, 25, 26 related to bonds. Scott? Any specific question for Scott, or would you like an overview?
I guess the question, being on the water MPC, I know this is the other subcommittee that's kind of can approve of the IDC. I guess I'm just wondering, is there any financial risk that we have, relating to us allowing John C. Lincoln Hospital, which is not in Gilbert, have access to the availability of us to provide this? I'm just kind of curious.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Cook, and council members, first off, I'm Scott Powell. I'm an Economic Development Administrator within the town. And the answer to that question is no. There is no financial risk. There is no legal risk. An IDA, pretty much works is, think of it nothing more than a conduit or pass-through financing. It's nothing more than a mechanism that allows, originally started for manufacturers to take advantage of tax-exempt bond issuances. It's kind of morphed now into a lot more of the hospitals and nonprofits to use it as conduit financing. So it allows people that can work in the tax-exempt realm that do not have a mechanism to take advantage of tax-exempt bonding. In this case, a hospital, there is no hospital board that can issue a bond, so they have to go to the Health Facilities Board or an Industrial Development Authority in which to do their issuances. So, so through state statute, we can't do those. So the best example is I tend to use charter schools. You're seeing probably the most of those being financed right now. Gilbert Public Schools wants to issue debt. They go to the voters. They go to their authorization. They float a bond. If you're a charter school, there's nowhere to go. So industrial development authorities have been providing that gap. Is probably the best, is probably the easiest nexus in which to draw. But in ARS statute, there is provisions that there is no obligation, our debt, our credit, our legal, there is no legal liability to us. All we're doing is just, it's a political subdivision, they approved it, and passes to you. You pass it on the resolution, and they're allowed to carry off and issue the debt as they see fit.
Good, thank you. Anything else on 24, 25, 26?
So, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor?
Just checking to see if there were any additional questions or comments.
I'll be happy to provide a quick overview of IDAs, what they can and can't do if you're so inclined.
Thank you. We'll reserve that for now. Well, we actually did have an IDA presentation last year, so I think we're okay. But thank you.
Wow, I went through all this fancy stuff for nothing. So, and just
no, it was.
No, thank you. I was just concerned, that again, I kind of understand what the IDA provides. I just, thought it was really odd for something on the west side of town to come to the east side of town, for this. So. And
a lot of it comes down to, you hate to say it, it comes down to the transactional fees. The Health Facilities Board and the Phoenix IDA charge a lot more than we do. And, they had a good contact. We talked on the phone and realized that we were highly competitive, so they brought it here.
Councilmember Ray?
One quick comment. I spent quite a bit of time talking with Dan Henderson, and Scott offered many times to help me get through this as well as the liaison to this group. But a very short summary is there's no risk to the town in doing this. There's no financial loss to the town. In fact, the town will make a very small amount of money on this, but there's no risk to it, both to current credit rating and future credit rating, and that the costs that the John C. Lincoln pays the town to do this, the fees that they pay cover all the town costs, and then there's a little bit left over. So it's not a big money maker for the town by any means, but there's no worry, from me at least, that we're losing money on staff time, et cetera. It's all costs are recovered.
Thank you. Scott, thank you, and thank you for being prepared.
Happy to do so. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, members of council.
I think I'm going to insert, this is under the public hearing, but will be helpful for the council, either Melanie or Denise on 35, 36, 37. And it could be, just to clarify for the council members, we were last together, and there were discussions about some of the code proposals that were being made. 3 council members met with town leadership and town staff to review some of those. Is it a correct assumption that on 35, 36, 37, when we are seeing things, when we're seeing sentences strike through or words, that those are changes that came from discussions that occurred after our last town council meeting?
Mayor, council members, some of the changes have remained as the original suggestions, but the subcommittee has met twice and has made any other corrections or changes that they indicated they were interested in. So I can't differentiate at this point as to which ones the subcommittee made versus what were the original suggestions.
And it could be, I just wait 2 days, but I think for those who are not part of those discussions, for council members that participated, were there some key items that we should be aware of that were discussed, or is Thursday night the right time to have that discussion?
I think Thursday night would be fine, Mayor. Just as preliminary, though, I actually was only able to attend one of the 2 meetings, and I apologize for that, but I did submit all of my questions to Melanie ahead of time, and she was kind enough to take care of them. The one piece that I do have some concern about still is the fees. However, I'm willing to move forward with the proposed plan that our Parks and Rec Department has put together. They're the experts in this area. I am not. I have not put on personally a special event in our community or in others. And so I'm willing to walk down this road if we find that these fees are prohibitive, or if they don't encourage block parties and things like that, that we'll be keeping an eye on those things. There are substantial costs when it comes to block parties that the town incurs, although there's a benefit to the community as a whole as well. So this in no way, at least for the block party fee, is cost recovery. It isn't. But that's still where I have a little bit of concern, but I'm, again, willing to move forward in the plan that's been laid out, and obviously would love to have a 6-month and 12-month report back on how we're doing.
Thank you. That was very helpful.
Mayor?
Councilmember Peterson?
Mayor, on 35, I know it's the public hearing section, but just one comment on that. I know that there was direction from the council at the retreat to get cost recovery percentages related to these fees, and I still don't see that. I'm just wondering if there's anything from staff on that.
Mayor, Councilmember Peterson, I don't recall saying cost recovery percentages. I do believe I sent everyone a document that outlined how we came up with and identified the fees that are established. I don't know that there's a complete opportunity to do cost recovery percentages because it's difficult when you're looking at a site rental fee to try to incorporate all of the maintenance costs of a general park area. However, we could attempt to do so.
So when did you send this email? I'm sorry. I guess I missed it.
Mayor, Councilmember Peterson, let me clarify. Did everybody get the fee thing that had the red and green colors that I sent last week? Okay. I will send that again today. So I apologize. I believe I started sending it, so maybe it didn't go. I apologize. I will definitely send that to you today.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else then on those 3 agenda items? Thank you. Next, 38 and 40. And this covers a topic that we had about a month ago of inserting advertisements in our utility bills, and also a request to have a more formal policy. And so the policy has been prepared, and that's agenda item 40, and 38 gives some more details about moving forward. And so to Councilmember Cooper, why don't we start with you if there are some specific questions, and then Leslie can also give an overview.
I don't know if I have some specific questions. I actually think the policy was pretty well drafted, and I appreciated that. What we talked about last time is understanding how, from the policy perspective, ads would be selected, and then we also started talking about how the funds would be used. And but as I've kind of been thinking more about this, my preference is to have more of an overall discussion about advertising from the town perspective, town property, town vehicles, whatever it might be, just have a general conversation about that rather than an incremental approach. And so that's where I've kind of centered as of right now. I don't really have any specific questions. I know the members of the public raised several questions when this first came out related to not bidding this one out, transferring funds from utility to general fund, and how just favoring businesses and things like that. Those were just some of the questions, and I also have some of those questions along with the environmental impact of doing this, and just my sheer hatred of all things junk mail related. And so I don't really have any specific thoughts other than my preference that we kind of have a more overarching discussion as it relates to advertising.
And to our legal counsel, can we, on this subject, expand a little bit as far as that general question, or does that need to be a different agenda?
Mayor, that really should be a more broad agenda because your public's going to come to talk about utility inserts.
Okay, thank you. To Councilmember Cooper, I can say this as I looked at the policy and I asked some questions about where did the policy come from, thinking that it might have been from City of Mesa. It turned out to be more City of Phoenix. And the City of Phoenix policy was where they did advertising in general. And that's a positive. If we choose to go forward with advertising, that is the type of statement that is working in the City of Phoenix for various things that they're doing. But with the legal counsel that just came, we'd need to put that as a separate agenda item. I will probe, because we did receive a lot of feedback from citizens. It was very helpful. Some of the comments were that we would prefer not to have the inserts because that would be treated as junk mail. And keeping it specific to the utility bills, realizing that there's a bigger picture, thumbs up, thumbs down, or in a more formal way, approved or not approved. What are your thoughts?
First of all, I don't receive town statements anymore. I get everything electronically, and I know there's provisions for that. But the companies that do provide me statements, that stuff goes directly in the trash without even being looked at. I can't stand it. And from an environmental standpoint, having worked on the general plan and trying to conserve resources and lead the way, I'm not sure that that's really consistent with that. So really not real excited about the idea.
Now, if you're, let's say, your local elementary school, where you have options to do the fundraising, where you're in charge of your children going door to door and selling cans, no, maybe a bad example, but if your school had a chance to do fundraising by having inserts into the packets that go home to parents, I mean, it's the same sort of thing. Talk to us about that. I mean, if there's a good cause, and I understood the citizens, they had the same feeling. And now there's a trade-off of, can you withstand having to put something in the garbage if there is a positive that's coming from it, especially some... Well, yeah, put it in the recycle. That's now the next question. I'm just using you as a typical citizen because we're looking for feedback.
Well, I partially wonder if this is some sort of a secret way of reaching our WIG goal on raising the recycle thing. But no, really, at my school, actually, the PTO, so they're moving all of that electronic as well. So, but, just because we can do something doesn't necessarily mean that we should do something. And it's just, I don't have a great desire to send this kind of stuff out to people. And the fact that in the policy, which is pretty well written, one of the items where it says a Gilbert business or a business doing business in Gilbert, I got a little nervous about the doing business in Gilbert part because everybody does business in Gilbert, including national companies and things like that. And so I got a little bit concerned about that. Are we really helping Gilbert businesses, or are we maybe helping a Mesa company that does business in Gilbert? And so that was one thing there. But again, I just have an aversion to
Sure, thank you, and we appreciate that. One Leslie, you can comment on this. I don't know if I'm giving the exact figures, but we have 70,000 utility customers, and I think you told me 13,000 are using the electronic approach. And City of Mesa is currently only receiving revenue through the inserts into their physical hard copy mail and not electronically, but what could happen for us is that it could also be part of the electronic bill, so that could still be part. Is that correct, Leslie?
Mayor, Council, yes, and just so everybody knows, I am Leslie Nieves, the utility billing manager for the town of Gilbert, and yes, that is correct. We would be able to put any advertising, attach them to the emails that go out to the customers that receive their e-bills.
Thank you.
Well, they'll go right to the spam with the rest. No. The other comment I want to make is really relates to what feels like a transfer. I mean, the revenues are coming through the utility side, but moving over to general, and that may or may not be true from an accounting perspective, but that's the feel. And my other concern is, because it's been raised, well, maybe this would help offset the monies used for nonprofits. I don't like tying those funds to something that's contractual like this that could be reversed by a future council, and just kind of just leaves, it puts out another question there. It either goes in the general fund and is just used, or it stays in the utility funds. I don't like tying it to a specific use unless it's a temporary use that we can go without. So that rounds out my thinking on it.
Other comments?
Mayor?
Councilmember Peterson, and then Councilmember Daniels.
Oh, sorry, I can't see if someone's raised their hand. I apologize. So my question on this, I guess my comments on this is, I believe we should add another item to the same agenda. I think we should delay these and also talk about how the funds could be used as a part of the discussion, because we can't really talk about that yet, but I think it bears so heavily on how we proceed, if at all, on this idea as to what the funds will be doing. And so I really think we should have a broader discussion. So maybe we agendize that for the future. But I don't know what others' thoughts are. But I think there are other issues we need to be able to talk about at the same time in order to work it all together to make sure the big picture works.
Thank you. Councilmember Daniels?
Thank you, Mayor. I hear and understand that there's some challenges. I love the fact that we're giving preference to Gilbert businesses, and I think that has a win-win for both our citizens and our local businesses, so I appreciate that part of it. I don't have a problem with utility billing advertisements. I do too. I also received my utility statement via email, and couponing is a big deal right now. There's all kinds of TV shows. I think that we're providing value, take it or leave it, just like some other things that we do. As far as where the money goes, some of our contractual nonprofits that we work with provide utility billing assistance for individuals, and granted, it might be their SRP bill and it might be their water bill. We don't know, but this in reality could be going to pay the town back for those obligations. And so I kind of see this a circle, if you will, when it comes to that funding. I would be fine putting it in the neighbor to neighbor funds. I think that that's a logical place for it. What we decide to do at that point with the money comes back to council, and we can allocate at that time, just like we did this past year. So that's my preference for it. Again, neighbor to neighbor fund is in the general fund. And that would give us an option, if you will. Clearly, there's some extensive discussion that needs to occur at the council level as far as where our priorities are when it comes to neighbor, just like we do with community services funding. So anyway, I throw all that out there, but I think that there is a place for it. I don't want to see us kick the can down the road any further. I think we can make these types of decisions and come to a logical conclusion, and in a very near future, a month or even 2 months, we can have that discussion about where those dollars are best used.
Thank you. Other comments? Vice Mayor Sens?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm kind of like, in some respects, Councilmember Cooper. When I get these unsolicited credit card notices in the mail. The little one that has all the rates on it, I slip that in the envelope, and then I support the United Postal Service as they send it back to the originator empty, except for that. But I think Councilmember Daniels hit on a good point. We don't need to decide how the money's spent. We could put it into an account and let the council decide in the future. The one thing I did talk to Leslie about today that I do have a concern, and Councilmember Cooper brought it up, is 4A about the advertiser shall be located in Gilbert or do business in Gilbert. I recommended to her that we say it's open to businesses that are registered with the town of Gilbert. We're trying to get businesses to register, and I think that would be a good incentive for them to register and have a business license from the town of Gilbert.
Thank you. Very helpful comment. Any other comments? So that, Councilmember Daniels?
I'm sorry, just procedurally, it would make more sense to me if we move item 40 and to that first before we see 38 on Thursday night.
So for 40, it's the policy statement. And and that's feedback right there. Let's just stay with 40 for a minute. Are there any other policy statements, suggestions for 40 that would be appropriate to bring up right now? And Councilmember Daniels, with that, the expression, we don't want to just kick the can and keep talking about, but there was a lot of activity from the last discussion, and so we did want to allow adequate time for citizens to comment on this and provide feedback, and maybe that'll still come in the next 2 days, but it's also possible that people haven't recognized this, and so maybe 40 we proceed with on Thursday, and then 38 is still open for discussion, or clarify when you were saying 40 first, would we also move back to 38 for Thursday night, or would you see waiting for another meeting for that?
Oh, no, I'd like us to vote on 38 as well on Thursday night. I just, procedurally, it would make more sense that we approve the policy prior to approving any type of contract. So mine was just a procedural comment. We have had substantial feedback from the public, but of course would welcome any additional feedback that there might be. I don't see this as being super controversial, but others may feel differently. And I think with the policy in place, there's some clear statements and outline as far as what our responsibility is as a community and the responsibility we have to the public. So I feel very comfortable with both of these items. And again, if a year from now we look at this and say this was a bad idea or it created additional problems, this isn't something that we're locked into. How long's the contract with Save My Stamp? 4 months?
Mayor and council, the initial contract only goes through January 1st of 2013.
Okay, so let's evaluate in December and see how we're doing.
So it'd just be for a few months?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay. Any other comments then?
Mayor?
Yes.
On item number 40, I have a question for everyone, really. I know that there's a policy statement there about alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. I'm not sure that we need to rule that out. I was thinking about Postino's Wine Cafe. I mean, can they not advertise now? I mean, I really don't have a problem with that. And I'm thinking as long as there's nothing profane or vulgar in the advertising, I'm not sure we should limit it beyond that. But there's no liability. It's clear that we're not promoting any of the products. I mean, there's all kinds of products. You could promote a home builder, for instance, who had bad homes. I won't name one, but it wouldn't be the town's fault if they got a bad product. I'm not sure what the point is in ruling some of those things out. So.
Leslie, I think back to a lot of this came from City of Phoenix, and where they do advertising on their buses or bus stops and public places that a restaurant would be fine to be advertised as one of the vendors, but I think that just means that you wouldn't have any of those items presented as the main reason why you would go there. So the restaurant could still be promoted, but that would allow the restaurant, but not the specific things that are potentially services inside the restaurant. Is that a good way to answer that?
Mayor, Councilman Peterson, I would need to get specific information for the attorneys, but I believe so. A restaurant would be fine, but we would not allow specific advertisements for alcohol and tobacco within the advertisement. So definitely the restaurant would be fine.
I see the nodding of our legal counsel, and
Total Wine's out
Total Wine would, from legal counsel perspective.
Under this policy, yes, sir, it would be out because unless they were going to advertise their sell on Diet Coke or something.
Okay. Okay. Other comments or questions? Okay.
Mayor?
Yes.
Back on 38 for just a second, if I can. I just want to refer to a statement there I would question, and actually we can't question it in detail because, again, this gets into the question of where the money will be spent, but I just kind of want to challenge it for a second here. Statement in the packet says that the revenue is not generated by any of the utility services offered. And so my question would be, what would the potential for this revenue be if we didn't offer utility services? And you can answer that yourselves, but I do think we need to have that discussion about where the money should be used, where it makes sense to be used, as a part of this larger discussion. I know there's others that disagree, but I'll just reiterate that one last point. Thanks.
Thank you for providing a good question to ponder. Is there any discussion on that? Okay. Leslie, thank you. This was not one of the items we brought up, but just for the council to know, and I don't know what number it is yet, but there's an agenda item that was added on the follow-up to the retreat, the Regulatory Reduction Committee, and I might just turn to Manager Banjer to give an update, or I know you had some discussions from the retreat, and that might be helpful for the study session to have a quick overview of that, or we can wait for Thursday night.
Yeah, I have not had any meetings, follow-up meetings as of yet, Mayor. We didn't anticipate this item coming back for Thursday, so I'm not quite certain what the discussion will be on for Thursday.
Okay. Well, it is Tuesday, so what the wording on the agenda item is just to say, really coming back to the retreat, we'd like to consider a committee being formed.
Yeah, Mayor, council members, it came from Councilmember Peterson, an email he sent last week asking if there were two others who would like to bring this forward for discussion. We got the third affirmative yes today, and so Kathy is, Town Clerk Kathy Templeton has added that to the agenda for Thursday night, an addendum to the agenda.
And this is from the retreat. I know you're doing some follow-up and taking the feedback from the council, and you were going to come back and propose this is how we could address some of the things that were mentioned. If you had your preference, would you be asking for more time, or would the Thursday night discussion help you as you move forward?
I think the discussion on Thursday night, if there's direction that the council would like to take, or additional feedback would be helpful, yes, from Thursday night.
So proceed. Anything from the council for today that would be helpful? Okay, thank you.
Mayor, unless Manager Banjer's really adamant on Thursday night, I don't think that it's that important that we talk about this on Thursday. If it sits 2.5 weeks, life's going to go on. And so if Patrick wants to talk about it Thursday and get a little bit more direction, great. But I don't think that we need to make a big rush out of this to put it on Thursday. I think the point was just to have it on an agenda, whether it's Thursday or whether it's 2 weeks. It's just fine.
Okay. Mayor, council members, it went on Thursdays because that was part of Councilmember Peterson's original request to have it on for discussion. Again, he first sent the email about a week ago. So that's why it went on Thursdays. If we'd like to continue it from there, that'd be just fine.
All right. So it will appear for Thursday. We do have an option, and that may be something if you have strong feelings about wanting a little more time, you could have a conversation with Councilmember Peterson, and that could be part of the Thursday night discussion. Sure. On the public. Okay.
Mayor?
Yes.
Sorry. So on this item, I've already got plenty of ideas on where we can go with this thing. But of course, it will just be an item for discussion, and we can get input from the rest of the council. And I believe there is a meeting scheduled before Thursday with some of the small business representatives. And so we can get some feedback from that and have something to discuss. I'm not proposing that any final decisions will be made Thursday, but I think it's good to continue the discussion. And like I said, I've got some ideas I'd like to put out there. We can start vetting this through. So,
thank you. As we proceed with various activities in the month of September, I will use agenda item 41 to talk about future meetings. In talking to our town clerk, the county from last week's election, they will not have, and is the right term canvass, or is the right term provided their final election results that allows us to canvass the election?
Sorry, Mayor Lewis, council members. I've been notified that the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors will be canvassing the election on Friday at 9 a.m. Therefore, we will not receive all the reports that Gilbert needs to canvass the results for our local election until after that time. So we will need to look at scheduling a special meeting sometime next week or no later than the 17th, which is 20 days after the election when the law requires we canvass.
Thank you. For the council, knowing that we need to schedule one additional meeting between now and the 17th, there are several that are coming next Tuesday evening for meetings here. And to our town clerk, this is a meeting that we could have some call in on. It will be 5 minutes or less, most likely. And so one proposal is that we would have this meeting next Tuesday, a week from today, on September 11th at 4:45 p.m. And that would precede a meeting that three of us will be at 5 o'clock and then some at 6. And as noted, it would not be a problem if we had, wherever you may be, if you did it by teleconference. And so that's one option. And there could be other times. There could be mornings, late. We were assuming that either early morning or late afternoon for those who wanted to be here in person might work. But let's start with one proposal is next Tuesday at 4:45 p.m. Does that work for the council? I'm seeing some thumbs up, but Councilmember Peterson, I better verbally ask you if that works for you.
yes.
Kathy, let's proceed with that as a potential. And the other reminder I give, our next study session 2 weeks from today will begin at 5 p.m. It will be in Seville, and it will be our chance to, after the study session items are covered at 6 p.m., to hear from some of the neighborhoods in South Gilbert, and we are looking forward to that as a council. We also have other items that are noted. September 20th, we have our next Economic Development and Ambassador Forum, which will be in the morning. And all council members should have received notification of that, and business leaders have also been notified, and look forward to that event that will take place in the morning. September 25th, you'll also be receiving notification of our annual Faith Group Summit, and that will be held in the morning at the Greenfield Library. Part of the last 2 years, that event has been held in November, and we're moving it up because we're going to be giving our faith group leaders information about the October 20th Make a Difference Day. The other, and this is just an FYI because it will occur this week, but Gilbert, even though this is taking place in a physical location, Mesa, but Gilbert is serving as a host for the Canada-Arizona Business Council meeting, which is a great honor for Gilbert, and that will be Friday morning at the Chandler Gilbert Community College Bridget Hall, which is just adjacent to our Gateway Airport. And the focus of that meeting will be on transportation, on aerospace, aviation. Lynn Kuzi from the Gateway Airport will be making a presentation. And just very exciting that we're being asked to serve as the host for that meeting. Other items from the council before we close the study session for future meetings or something we may have missed? Then we will end our study session. And I will call to order.
Mayor, that is a separate meeting. You'll be calling to order at 5:30 upstairs.
Okay. Then we adjourn the study session. Thank you. That is, as noted, says estimated time.